Hey man, let me tell you about this wild night that still gets under my skin when I think about it. Picture this. It's a humid evening in Detroit, and Kofi Adebayo, my cousin from Nigeria who's been grinding as a mechanic here for years, pulls into this rundown gas station off Woodward Avenue. He's tired, after fixing engines all day, his hands stained with grease, that thick accent rolling off his tongue as he mumbles to himself about grabbing a soda. I was there, leaning against his beat-up truck, just chilling, when these two cops roll up, lights flashing like it's a damn crime scene. Sergeant Dan Lowry, this burly white guy with a smirk that could cut glass, steps out, eyeing Kofi up and down like he's some troublemaker fresh off the boat. "What's a guy like you doing here?" he says, voice dripping with that contempt you can feel in your bones. His partner, Officer Mike, just chuckles, adjusting his belt like he's ready to throw hands. I could see Kofi stiffen, but he kept it cool, digging out his wallet with those steady hands that can rebuild a carburetor blindfolded. "Just getting gas, officer," he says, calm as ever, though I know inside he's swallowing that frustrated resentment we've all felt too many times. But then Dan's eyes narrow and he snaps, "ID, now, let's make sure you're not some illegal squatting around." The way he said it, man, it was like a punch to the gut, especially with a couple of locals pumping gas nearby, sneaking glances like we're some sideshow. Kofi hands over his driver's license, and that's when I noticed it. A faded badge peeking out, half hidden under a photo of his mom back in Lagos. I didn't say a word, but my mind was racing. What's that about? I thought. He never talks about his past, and now I'm wondering if there's something big he's keeping locked up tight. Dan snatches the ID, smirking. "This accent's gotta be a red flag. Where'd you even learn to drive?" Mike laughs, loud enough to turn heads, and I can feel the heat rising in my chest. Kofi just stands there, shoulders squared, not giving them the satisfaction of a flinch. But I saw it, the way his jaw tightened, the flicker of hurt in his eyes before he masked it with that calmness he's got down pat. Those cops, though, their motivation was clear. Coldness mixed with that inner conflict of knowing they're pushing too far but too proud to back off. The gas station air felt heavy, like the whole neighborhood was holding its breath, waiting for something to blow. I kept thinking, man, if they only knew. But then everything changed in a way I couldn't have imagined. And here's the kicker. A Latina trucker, Rosa, pulls up, her rig rumbling like a beast. She hops out, all curves and confidence, and tosses Kofi a nod, saying, "Hey, hermano, you good?" In that warm, unexpected way that threw Dan off for a sec. She didn't know him, but she saw the vibe, and that small act? It was like a spark in the dark, hinting maybe Kofi's got more allies than we thought. The cops didn't like it, their smirks fading as Rosa leaned against her truck, watching like a guardian angel. I couldn't help but wonder, what's Kofi hiding in that wallet? And how long's he gonna let these clowns push him before he flips the script? Trust me, you're gonna want to stick around for this one. Hey man, after that messed up night at the gas station, I could tell Kofi was carrying a weight heavier than that old truck of his, but he wasn't about to let it show. Not yet. Those cops, Dan and Mike, kept circling back, pulling him over for random checks, their smirks getting nastier each time, like they were itching to prove something. I'd see him clench his jaw, that calm vibe still there, but inside, I know he was swallowing that bitter pill, thinking about how many times he'd had to bite his tongue back in Lagos before his family scraped together enough to get him here. He'd just nod, hand over his ID, and get back to work, but I could feel the fire building slow and steady. At the garage, though, that's where Kofi started turning it around, He'd stay late, hands moving like magic over those engines, fixing up cars for folks who couldn't afford the fancy shops. Amina, his little sister, she'd swing by after her nursing shift, slipping him a cold soda and a quiet, "You got this, bro." She's got that same steel in her, raised on those stories of their dad dodging checkpoints back home, and she'd watch him with this proud glint, even when he was covered in oil. One night, she handed him a rusted wrench their dad sent over years ago, saying, "He'd want you to use this." And I saw Kofi's eyes soften, like that old tool was a piece of his soul he'd forgotten. It pushed him harder, man, like he was proving something to that memory. But those cops? They weren't letting up. Dan started parking across the street, watching through those tinted windows, muttering stuff like, "Immigrant trash thinks he's a mechanic now?" to Mike, who'd laugh like it was a damn comedy show. The neighborhood started noticing, too. Folks whispering about how Kofi's getting targeted, and it stung, you know? I'd catch him staring at that badge in his wallet sometimes, fingers tracing it like he was debating something big, but he'd shake it off and get back to work. One day, a kid from the block, little Marcus with his sagging jeans and a soccer ball, rolled up and asked, "Mr. Kofi, why they always on you?" Kofi knelt down, ruffling the kid's hair, saying, "Sometimes people see the skin, not the skill, but we keep grinding, all right?" That hit me. Here's this guy taking flack, still lifting others up. Then came the twist I didn't see coming. Rosa, that Latina trucker from the gas station, started showing up at the garage, hauling parts she swore she found lying around. She'd lean against her rig, cracking jokes about Detroit traffic, but I could tell she was keeping an eye out like some guardian angel with a CB radio. One evening, when Dan rolled by again, she stepped out, hands on hips, and yelled, "Leave the man alone, cabron. He's fixing my rig better than your squad car." Dan's face went red, but he peeled off, and Kofi just gave her a nod, that quiet strength in his eyes growing. I kept thinking, man, this guy's got more in him than anyone knows, and I'm dying to see when he's going to let it out. The garage air felt thick with hope and defiance, like the whole block was rooting for him, waiting for that moment to flip the script. All right, listen up, 'cause this is where it gets wild, man. A few weeks after Rosa started showing up, things hit a boiling point one rainy night outside the garage. Kofi was locking up, that wrench from his dad still in hand when Dan and Mike pulled up, lights blazing like they owned the street. "Step out, Adebayo. We got a tip you're running a chop shop," Dan barked, his voice all cold and cocky, like he'd finally caught the big fish. Mike grabbed Kofi's arm, yanking him toward the cruiser, and I could see the hurt flash in Kofi's eyes, hurt for every time he'd been dragged down for nothing. Amina ran out, yelling, "Let him go, he's done nothing." But they shoved her back, and that's when the block started gathering, phones out, murmuring. Kofi didn't fight, just stood there, rain soaking his shirt, and I could feel the tension like a coiled spring. Dan smirked. "Let's see if your papers hold up this time," pulling out cuffs, but Kofi's voice cut through the storm, steady as steel. "You're making a mistake. I'm a DEA agent." The words hung there, and for a second, it was like the rain stopped. Dan froze, cuff dangling, his face going from smug to pale faster than you can blink. Mike dropped Kofi's arm, stepping back like he'd seen a ghost, and the crowd gasped. Some dude shouted, "What the hell?" I swear, I almost laughed at how quick their tough guy act crumbled. But Kofi wasn't done. He reached into his wallet, pulling out that faded badge, holding it up so the streetlight caught the gold, and said, "I've busted cartels you couldn't dream of touching. Back off my family." Amina's eyes widened, pride mixing with shock. She didn't even know, man, and neither did I till that moment. Dan stammered, "You're lying," but his voice cracked, and Mike was already backing toward the car, muttering, "We gotta check this." Then Rosa's rig roared up, horn blaring, and she jumped out, yelling, "I've seen this man save lives. Y'all better run." The crowd cheered, phones recording every second, and I could see Dan's hands shake as he realized the mess he'd stepped in. Inside, Kofi was a storm of his own. relief that Amina was safe, rage at the years of this crap, and this quiet pride he'd buried deep. He looked at me, rain dripping off his dreads, and said, "I didn't want this life to touch her, but they forced my hand." I nodded, feeling that mix of awe and anger, knowing he'd been carrying this DEA weight alone. Dan tried to save face. "We'll verify." But his tone was hollow, and as they drove off, the block erupted, folks clapping, Marcus running up with a grin. "You showed 'em, Mr. Kofi." I kept thinking, man, this is it. The moment they all eat their words, and it feels so damn good to watch. Man, after that rainy night, the whole neighborhood was buzzing, and let me tell you, the fallout hit hard. Word spread like wildfire. Clips of Kofi flashing that DEA badge went viral, and Dan and Mike got hauled in for an internal review faster than you can say lawsuit. I saw Dan outside the precinct one day, head down, muttering to Mike about how he didn't mean it to go this far, but the guilt in his eyes was real. He knew he'd crossed a line he couldn't uncross. Mike just stared at the ground, cold sweat on his brow, probably wondering if his career was toast. Kofi didn't gloat, though. He just watched from across the street, that calm back, but I could tell he was wrestling with whether to forgive or let them stew. Back at the garage, things shifted big time. Amina started organizing, turning the place into a hub for kids like Marcus, teaching them auto skills with that wrench their dad sent over like it was a family heirloom. Jamal, this old black vet from down the block, rolled in with tools and a grin, saying, "Time to build something real, son." Kofi took it in stride, setting up a youth shop, free for anyone who wanted to learn, and the community poured in. Moms dropping off snacks, grandpas sharing stories of their own run-ins with the law. I saw him one evening wiping grease off his hands, looking at those kids and muttering, "This is what I fought for, not just me, but them." It hit me. He was redefining his life, turning pain into purpose. Rosa kept showing up too, hauling parts and cracking jokes about her abuela's tamal, bringing that Latin flair that made the garage feel like a melting pot. One day she handed Kofi a hand-painted keychain, red, green, and black, saying, "For your roots, hermano." He clutched it, eyes misty, and I knew it was tying him back to Nigeria in a way he hadn't felt since he left. The cops? They got suspended pending investigation, and I heard Dan tried calling Kofi, voice shaky. "I'm sorry, man." But Kofi just hung up. Forgiveness wasn't on the table yet. The block felt lighter, though, like Kofi's stand had cracked open a door for everyone, and I kept thinking, this is what payback looks like. Quiet, strong, and spreading. So, here we are, man, a few months down the line, and Kofi's garage is more than just a fix-it spot. It's a beacon. He'd sit the kids down after lessons, that keychain from Rosa dangling from his belt, and say, "Prejudice tries to break you, but you build back stronger." I'd watch Marcus nod, wide-eyed, and Amina smile, proud as hell. Kofi's dreaming big now, a community center where kids can learn trades, safe from the cops who once hounded him. One night, under the garage lights, he told me, "I want Detroit to feel like home for all of us." And I could hear that Nigerian lilt breaking through, raw and real. The cops. Dan's still out there, quieter now, maybe rethinking his life, but Kofi's not holding grudges. He's too busy lifting others. Jamal brought over an old radio, blasting Motown classics, and Rosa danced with the kids, her laughter filling the air like a Latin beat. I saw Kofi watching, a peace in his eyes I hadn't seen before, like he'd finally shed that weight. He handed Marcus the wrench one day, saying, "Pass it on when you're ready." And that hit me. Legacy, man. That's what this is about. The neighborhood's buzzing. Folks talking about a Detroit Drive movement, and I keep thinking, this is what freedom tastes like after all the mess. Kofi's message stuck with me. Stand tall, even when they don't see you. It's for the next generation, for every kid who's ever been pulled over for no reason. The garage air feels warm, hopeful, and I know he's not stopping. There's more fights ahead, but he's ready. So, what do you think, man? Ready to root for a guy who turned hate into hope? Stick around, 'cause this story's just getting started. Man, things were rolling smooth at the garage, but you know life ain't that easy. Kofi was about to face the toughest fight yet. A few weeks after the youth shop took off, a big protest hit downtown Detroit, folks rallying against police brutality after another bad shooting. Kofi felt it in his bones. He had to be there, badge or not. I tagged along, watching him weave through the crowd, that DEA glint in his eye, when this crooked cop, Officer Trent, stepped up, all smug with a badge polished like he owned the place. "You stirring trouble again, Adebayo?" he sneered, shoving a flyer in Kofi's face, trying to pin some riot blame on him. The crowd hushed, phones out, and I could see Kofi's fists clench, that old rage bubbling up from those gas station nights. But Kofi didn't snap. He just stared Trent down, calm as a lake, and said, "I've got proof you took bribes to look the other way on that last bust." Trent laughed, but it was shaky, and Kofi pulled out his phone, playing a grainy video of Trent pocketing cash from a dealer Kofi had busted undercover. The crowd gasped, some yelling, "Get him!" And Trent's face went white, his hand twitching toward his holster. Inside, Kofi was a mess, fear for the kids watching, pride in his work, and this deep-din Luke, resolve to not let this slide. He stepped closer, voice low. "You want to test me, or you want to walk away?" Trent froze, sweat beading, and backed off, muttering curses as the crowd cheered. Amina rushed over, hugging him tight, whispering, "You're a hero, bro." And I could see the weight lift a little, even as he wondered how far this fight would go. Later, a local reporter, this black guy named Darius with a camera crew, caught Kofi's eye, nodding respect. "That took guts," he said, and Kofi just shrugged. Guts don't mean much if it don't change nothing. I kept thinking, man, this guy's pushing every limit, and I'm holding my breath to see if he pulls it off. The protest air felt electric, like Detroit was waking up, and that wrench from his dad seemed to glow in his hand as he held it up, a symbol for every kid watching. All right, man, just when I thought Kofi was in the clear, life threw a curveball that stung deep. A guy from the garage, this dude Tony, who'd been quiet but helpful, turned out to be a snake. One night, I overheard him on the phone, spilling Kofi's undercover past to some shady cop contact, saying, "He's a liability, let's dig up dirt." I told Kofi right away, and man, you should have seen his face, hurt. Yeah, but that cold anger too, like he was ready to shut it down. Amina was furious, pacing the garage. "After all he's done for you?" But Kofi just shook his head, muttering, "Some folks only see what they want to see." The next day, Tony's lies hit the street. Rumors Kofi was dirty, working both sides, and Dan, back from suspension, smirked like he'd won. The kids at the shop looked confused, Marcus asking, "Mr. Kofi, is it true?" Kofi knelt, ruffling his hair. "Nah, little man, they're scared of what I can do." But inside, he was torn. Years of hiding his DEA life, and now it's biting him back. He decided to fight fire with fire, setting up a live demo right there on the block, fixing a busted engine while folks watched. Rosa rolled up with her rig, blasting salsa music, and Jamal brought a crew to paint a mural, Kofi's face with that wrench, bold as hell. Tony showed up, smirking, "This won't save you." But as Kofi finished the repair, the crowd cheered, and a young Latina artist, Carla, stepped forward, handing him a sketch of his dad's old village. "Saw your story online, thought you'd like this," she said, and Kofi's eyes teared up, that past flooding back. The block turned on Tony, booing him out, and I could feel Kofi's relief, that "fuck hoy," recovery, kicking in. He looked at me saying, "Sometimes the betrayal's the fuel," and I nodded thinking, man, this guy's turning lemons into lemonade, Detroit style. Man, if you thought that was wild, wait till you hear this. A month later, Kofi got a call that blew us all away. A national task force wanted him for a big drug bust operation, and they were rolling into Detroit to honor his DEA work. I was there when they showed up, suits and all, pinning a medal on him outside the garage while the block watched, jaws dropped. His dad, this tall guy with a cane, flew in from Nigeria, tears in his eyes, saying, "My boy made us proud." Kofi just stood there, that keychain from Rosa jingling, and I could see the pride swelling, but also that quiet worry. Would this change him? Dan and Trent were there too, forced to stand in the back, faces like they'd swallowed something sour. Dan tried a weak, "Congrats," but Kofi didn't even look at him, just shook the task force guy's hand, saying, "This is for the kids who get stopped for no reason." Amina was beaming, holding a Nigerian flag someone brought, and Jamal fired up the grill, the air filling with the smell of jollof rice and barbecue, a black Latin mashup that had folks dancing. Inside, Kofi was wrestling with it all, relief that the doubters were silenced, but also this Ngo Ngang, amazement that his hidden life was out, raw and real. Carla's mural got updated that day, adding the medal, and Marcus ran up, "You're famous, Mr. Kofi." Kofi laughed, ruffling his hair. "Fame don't mean much if we don't keep fighting." I kept thinking, man, this is what payback looks like. National shine on a guy they tried to break. The crowd chanted his name, and even some cops in the back clapped, maybe rethinking their ways. But Kofi's focus was clear. He wasn't stopping here. After that honor, Kofi didn't just sit back. He had a vision, man, and it was big. He launched this Detroit Drive initiative, turning the garage into a full-on training ground for kids, teaching them mechanics and life skills. Amina handled the books, Rosa hauled in donated parts, and Jamal brought in a mentor, this old black preacher named Reverend James, who'd been stopped by cops one too many times. One day, Reverend handed Kofi a worn Bible saying, "This got me through, pass it on," and Kofi's eyes lit up like it tied his faith to his fight. The community pitched in, church donations, a Latina bakery's cookies, even a GoFundMe that exploded online. I saw Kofi one evening, watching kids tinker with engines that wrench in his hand like a torch. He told me, "I want a chain of these, every city with a kid like Marcus." Inside, he was pumped but scared. Could he really pull this off? Amina teased, "You're turning into Dad." And he grinned, but I knew he was carrying that pressure to not let anyone down. Then came the kicker. A young Haitian kid, Jean, showed up with a sketch of Kofi fixing a car under a rainbow flag saying, "For hope." Kofi hugged him, tears falling, and I thought, man, this is what community looks like, raw and real. The garage buzzed with laughter and oil, a beacon for every immigrant kid dreaming big. Fast forward to now, Man and Kofi's at this town hall, standing tall in front of a mixed crowd, black, Latin, white, all ages. He's got that medal pinned, the wrench in one hand, and he's talking about equality like it's a sermon. "I was stopped for my skin, my accent, but I rose for my people," he says, voice steady, and the room nods, some wiping tears. Amina's in the back, proud as hell, and Rosa's filming, shouting, "That's my hermano." I could feel the Truyan cam hung, inspiration, hitting hard like Motown on a summer night. Kofi shares how every stop made him stronger, how Gene's sketch pushed him to keep going, and he vows, "We'll fight till no kid fears a badge." The crowd erupts, and a white cop in the back, maybe rethinking his life, claps slow. Inside, Kofi's quiet determination, is iron. He's not just surviving, he's leading. He ends with, "This is our Detroit. Yours, mine, ours. And folks start chanting, sparking a movement right there. I leaned over to Marcus, grinning. "You're part of this, little man," and he beamed. Kofi caught my eye, nodding like, "We're in this together." And I knew, this story's gonna keep rolling, changing lives, one wrench at a time. At its heart, Kofi Adebayo's journey through prejudice and triumph offers a profound lesson that resonates deeply with us all. Resilience and self-worth can rise like a phoenix from the ashes of injustice. This story reminds us that facing unfairness head-on, rather than staying silent, is the first step toward breaking the chains of toxic stereotypes and negative judgments that weigh us down. It's about recognizing our own value, even when others fail to see it, and finding strength in community and heritage to overcome life's storms. For adults and seniors in the U.S. and Western audiences, this speaks to a universal truth. Life isn't always fair, but by standing tall and seeking allies, we can rewrite our narratives. It invites us to reflect. Have we let others' biases dim our light? Have we turned a blind eye to someone else's struggle? The tale also broadens our perspective, revealing the beauty of diversity and the quiet courage it takes to demand fairness, not just for ourselves but for the next generation. It's a gentle nudge to let go of grudges and embrace self-respect, proving that every step toward justice plants a seed for a better tomorrow. So, take a moment. Share your thoughts on how this story touched you, or perhaps a time you faced your own battles, in the comments below. If it struck a chord, hit that like button to support us, and subscribe to catch more tales that blend drama with heart. Here's to finding peace amidst the chaos, and may hope light your path ahead, friends.